Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we are going to revise section B of Combined Science paper 2. In the final exam, candidates are required to answer N2 questions from this section, but we are going to revise all the questions since we are doing our revision. Number 7A is reading. Define the term pollination. So pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma. So this process of pollination can be carried out by insect, whereby it is going to be named insect pollinated. So insect pollination, or it can be done by wind, and the pollination is going to be named wind pollination. So in summary, we are saying pollination is the transfer of pollen grains that are the male sex cells from the anther to the stigma through insect or wind. Let us move on to part B. We are supposed to explain the importance of colored petals, stick pollen grains, and enclosed anthers of an insect pollinated flower. So the colored petals attract insects which transfer pollen grains. And then the next point that we are going to explain is stick pollen grains stick to the insect and are transferred to other flowers. And then finally, we want to explain how enclosed anthers assist insect pollinated flower. Enclosed anthers, they brush with insect to transfer pollen grains to the insect. And also enclosed anthers ensure that wind pollination is avoided, because if wind occurs, the pollen grains are going to form within the corolla of the flower, that is the stigma. So they are not going to be blown away with the wind. Let us move on to see part 1. We are supposed to state N2 conditions that are necessary for germination. I'm going to list all the conditions since we are doing our revision. So the first condition I'm going to state is moisture or water. And then the second condition that I'm going to state is warmth or a suitable temperature. And then the last one is oxygen. That is why it is required that the soil need to be aerated for germination to occur. So let me summarize the conditions that are necessary for germination. We need water or moisture. We need suitable temperature or warmth, and also we need oxygen. And then let us move on to see part 2. We're supposed to state N2 advantages of reproducing plants using seeds over vegetative propagation. So the first advantage of reproducing using seeds is that it provides genetic variation. When using seeds, it is also known as sexual reproduction in plants. It is going to provide genetic variation since we are using two different parents to produce a new plant. And then vegetative propagation is the same as asexual reproduction. It doesn't provide genetic variation since the parents that are used is one. We are just going to have one parent, so there's not going to be genetic variation when it comes to vegetative propagation. Another advantage of using seeds is that plants can be spaced since there is reduced competition for resources. So this was the complete solution for the question that was on number 7. in November 2018, Combined Science Paper 2. Let us move on to number 8. Number 8, Fig 8 shows a sperm. Explain how the structure of the sperm is related to its function. So we can see that this sperm has got this tail. The tail helps it to swim in the female reproductive system. At the head of the sperm, there is a component that is known as acrosome. Acrosome help the sperm to penetrate the ovum. At the middle piece of this sperm, there are so many mitochondria. This is to provide energy that is needed for the movement of the sperm from the male reproductive system to the female reproductive system. And also the sperm also contain haploid nucleus. This is to prevent doubling of chromosome after fertilization. So in summary, we are saying the tail helps sperm to swim in the female reproductive system. Acrosome helps sperm to penetrate the ovum. We are having more mitochondria for energy in the movement, and also the nucleus is haploid. That is, it contains half of the genes so that there is no doubling of chromosome that is going to happen after the process of fertilization. Let us move on to number 8, part 2. Suggest why sperms need to be produced in large numbers compared to female gametes. So what happens is some of the sperm die in the female reproductive system. So the reason why there is need to be produced number of sperm in large quantities is that there is going to be high chances of fertilization occurring since some of the sperms die in the female reproductive system. Let us move on to B, part 1. We are supposed to state in 2 phases of human menstrual cycle. So there is menstrual stage or the bleeding stage. So this is a process whereby the uterus wall is going to be broken down since it did not manage to receive a sperm for fertilization. So it is going to be broken down and it is released in blood. And then the second stage is follicular stage. This is a stage whereby the ovum is going to mature inside the ovaries. And then the third stage is known as ovulation stage. Ovulation stage is the process whereby the ovum is going to be released from the ovary into the oviduct for fertilization. And then the last stage is known as luteal stage. And then let us move on to B, part 2. We are supposed to state the part of female reproductive system where implantation of the fertilization of the fertilized ovum take place. It takes place in the uterus. And then on B, part 3, you're supposed to name in 2 substances which move from the mother to the fetus through the placenta. So first we are going to mention about dissolved food nutrients, for example, glucose, amino acids, mineral salts. And then we are going to mention also about antibodies. We are going to mention lastly about oxygen. So you're supposed to state dissolved food, for example, glucose, amino acids, mineral salts, vitamins, water, fatty acids, and glycerol. So if you mention, for example, if you just state glucose and amino acid, it is going to be considered as 1 mark. So you're supposed to state different types of substance. For example, you say dissolved food, you give examples, and then you say antibodies and oxygen in order to get all the 2 marks. So that was all about number 9. Let us move on to number 10. Sorry, I made a mistake. Let us now move on to number 9. We're doing number 8. So on number 9, we are having a fig 9, which is showing a food web in an ecosystem. So we are supposed to state what is represented by arrows between organisms. So these arrows, they are showing the flow of energy from each level to another level. So we are going to write energy flow. And then on number 9a, part 2, we are supposed to state the organism that feeds on all other organisms in the web. So we are going to mention about decomposers or fungi or bacteria. And then on number 9, part 3, we're supposed to state with reasons an organism in the web which could exist in small numbers. So we are going to talk about bird of prey. Why? Because it is at the highest trophic level. The numbers decrease up the trophic levels due to loss of energy and nutrients at each trophic level. Let us move on to part B. It is saying explain how a food web is better representation of what happens in an ecosystem than a food chain. So an organism depends on several sources of food in real life. This can only be shown on food webs and not in a food chain. Let us move on to part C. It is saying state and 2 activities of men that can be harmful in ecosystem. So here we are just stating and not explaining. So we are going to state about the use of pesticides and herbicides. We are going to mention also about poor farming methods. We are going to explain also about poor waste disposal and also deforestation. And then finally on part D, we are supposed to give in 2 factors that reduce the rate of transpiration. Transpiration is the loss of water from the leaves to the atmosphere. So it is going to be reduced by high humidity, low light intensity, low wind speed, and low temperatures. So this marks the end of our tutorial today on section B of Combined Science, November 2018, paper 2. Thank you so much guys for following me on this channel. Please don't forget to subscribe, like and share my videos. I love you all. This is Eve signing out.